Welcome everybody to Think Preparedness. This is a collaboration or a collective group between Nate over at Canadian Prepper, Chris, City Prepping, Cliff, the Urban Prepper, and myself from Full Spectrum Survival, where we're going to be talking about some of the things that are affecting our world right now and really start to get some of our own points of view on what is happening, something that we can all join in and look ahead and start preparing for those unknown events of tomorrow.
Yeah, hopefully in this video, we'd like to start off by sharing and looking at some of the current events that are happening in our world right now and how this impacts our community. We'll give some of our own thoughts on some of the issues that we're facing right now. And a little later in the video, we'll give kind of a view that we personally hold of what we see over the next 5 to 10 years, what we're preparing for, and how we implement these things in our life.
We were talking right before we started this video about something that's affecting all of us right now and what is going to continue to affect our world, at least in the Western world, for the next couple of months and possibly the next couple of years. And that is supply shortages. I mean, we're hearing about it everywhere. And I just got reports from my viewers today who are saying now it's being talked about on mainstream news programs, and they're really expecting the panic buying to start. Do you guys think that we're going to keep seeing these shortages over the next 3, 6 months, maybe 2 years? And what's it going to look like in that time period? Are we going to see panic buying?
Before we jump in, do you want to introduce ourselves, go through a quick round, and then we'll jump into it? So yeah, I know this is our first video that we're doing, so that'd be a great opportunity to introduce ourselves. Brad, do you want to kick off?
Okay, sure. So a lot of people will know me from Full Spectrum Survival. We put out near daily videos talking about really the current events of our world and getting ready for them, and just doing what we can as a community, especially on a budget too. And as far as my viewers are concerned, to really plan for those things that we don't really know what's going to happen next.
Cool. I'll go next. My name's Cliff. Also known as the Urban Prepper. I've been doing YouTube channels, YouTube videos now for about 11 years, been a prepper probably for around 12. And I focus on emergency preparedness topics that come from living in an urban environment. I work in software engineering and I do a lot of work within the city. And so a lot of the preparedness videos that I put out are more practical preparedness measures for folks that are in an urban environment.
Go ahead, Nate.
Oh, yeah, I'm a Canadian Prepper. I think most people are sub to me or sub to everybody else here, but sure. I do prepping from a Canadian perspective, a little bit urban, a little bit rural. Right now I run a store, www.canadianpreparedness.com, where we sell all types of prepping and survival gear. And a little shameless plug there. No problem. Yeah. So everybody hears about it every day when I release a video.
Hold on, I didn't write it down. What was it again?
www. No. Yeah, you know, it's getting colder up here, so expect more winter videos from the Canadian Prepper channel soon.
Cool. Yeah. My name is Chris, and I have a channel called City Prepping, and I started about 5 years ago with an emphasis on more suburban, urban environments. When I first started on the YouTube kind of platform looking into prepping, a lot of it I saw was more rural, and I didn't really see a whole lot to my specific area. So the content that we try to create on the channel really is geared toward, you know, teaching people skills, educating on different, you know, tools, knowledge, and we try to do an evaluation every week of different threats that the community should be aware of. And yeah, again, that's kind of on a high level what my channel is about.
Great. So I had somebody here in my neighborhood who was going out to the store to get some things for me, and they said, you know, I'll just let you know if something's not available. I got the first text that the 25-pound bags of rice weren't available. I got the second text that the seasonings weren't available at my local Sam's Club, and a couple of other things. And they wanted to know what they should, you know, get for me instead, just to save me the trip to the store. I know that here in my area at the southern end of the Appalachian Trail, we're seeing these shortages realized, and some areas are and some aren't. What are things looking like in your area, Nate, you know, from a completely different perspective in another country?
Yeah, in terms of grocery and produce, we're not seeing a huge shortage, but we're certainly seeing massive price increases.
Okay.
The further you go north in Canada, the greater the price increase because of the transportation issue. But yeah, what we're seeing is a shortage in terms of like commodities, non-edible commodities, I guess you would say. And running a store with over 1,000 products, I can get a pretty good sense of what's short. And you know, I know firsthand that these price increases are happening.
Well, it was one of your recent videos that really, woke a lot of people up when you showed that distributor letter that, hey, they were telling everybody they need to watch out because the lack of availability is really coming for them. You spoke a little bit about the commodities. Here in the States, the customers are being warned to look out for a 50% increase in their heating bill. What's it like up there?
I haven't really looked at the natural gas situation yet. I think we're
Okay.
fortunate. We have quite a bit of resources up here in terms of fuel. So, domestically, even though our oil is tar sand oil, it costs a lot more to mine and refine. We still have a lot of it, as
Okay.
well as natural resources. But yeah, what I'm seeing right now is most distributors are talking about easily this is going to last 6 months. I know the ports are starting to really focus on expediting the shipping backlog that they're seeing. But we're still going to be seeing lengthy delays for at least half the products that we sell. I think there was a period throughout the recent event that has transpired over the last 18 months that there was a period where people built up inventories,
Right.
and now those inventories are kind of being depleted. So there was a bit of glut with some of the products that we sell. Immediately after, like March 2020, there was a massive kind of shortage right away because everybody was, scrambling for
Stopped.
stuff.
Yeah.
And then, throughout 2020, people built up their inventories and there was a bit of a supply glut. And then now we're seeing that stuff run out or it just can't get to where it needs to be. So yeah, we're going to see some serious price increases pretty much on everything across the board. And it's going to be interesting to see what takes place between China and Taiwan, because Taiwan manufactures the chips and
Sure.
China builds the stuff that chips go into.
Right.
So that whole economic dynamic is going to lead to some sort of effect, I'm sure, if it doesn't play out well.
Yeah, that's right. What about
So
you,
don't throw
Cliff?
away
What are
your
you
old
seeing?
flat screen TV,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't know about the gas increase because my bill was a little bit more, come to think of it, and I was blaming the kids and my wife, but I guess maybe there's a spike happening, so I'm
Turn
going to
the
need to
lights
dive
off.
into that a little bit. Yeah,
Well,
that's what I was thinking.
in Europe, I think they're talking about like a 500% increase in the past year in natural gas.
Wow.
And the price of coal has tripled in China. And right now, I think 2/3 of China is struggling with blackouts and
Outages,
fuel
that's right.
shortages.
Well,
Yeah.
they put that ban
So-
on taking coal from Australia because Australia wanted to see, more information about labs and everything, and China blocked them, and so they punished them by refusing to take their coal.
Hmm.
And Europe is in a similar situation where originally there were sanctions against Russia, where they would get their, they would get it from what was it, Crimea or I forget the other one, Ukraine.
Yes.
And now it's like, well, Russia's got all this fuel, and it's like, well, we got to keep our people warm. So it's kind of like we got to, bite the bullet and just take it from them. So a lot of political aspects are impacting these supply chain issues for sure.
Now, you guys.
I was going to say in Prepper Seattle district, as far as for my particular region, I haven't really noticed as many like massive aisles with shortages over there. It's usually some kind of individual item. So I've noticed it mainly with the canning items. Like if you want to can something, that's usually going to go out of stock pretty quick, and the usual TP and everything. Hopefully everyone picked up their bidets during the TP crisis of 2020. But I really haven't seen that much. And what I do when I'm shopping is not do all of my shopping at one particular place like a Costco or Sam's Club, but I try to just like a squirrel kind of like go into different trees and pick and choose the stuff that I get there, and I'm usually able to get what I need. But
That's good. Yeah.
And I try not to base my at least for when it comes to food and everything based off of current events. I try to just keep a steady pace with it, so then I have a little bit of a buffer then to help out for when there might be something that might be out of stock. But reporting from my sector, it seems to be okay so far.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't really say in Southern Cal, to be honest. I really go into the stores. It's yeah. I mean, the few times I have, it seems like we have, but I have not checked here lately. I haven't heard any complaints from my wife, about things being hard to find. So far, fingers crossed. But again, going into the holiday season, where typically demand goes up anyway, and the supply chain's already on edge. I expect the next few months, I mean, I can't see anything changing. We have
I don't think that I don't think we're going to see massive shortages like there's nothing on the aisles. I think there's going to be just the things that are either hot items at that time or produced for a certain time of the year. I think we're going to see continued problems with that distribution.
Well, I think for like Christmas shopping and stuff, like I know a lot of people are trying to get a head start on it. So maybe if you're waiting till December to pick up the kind of some of those things for your kids, you might not find the right things. But for
yeah.
You know,
Well, there's been sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that a lot of people in my community have a lot of despair right now. And I think that that's an emotion that's in pretty good, it's going around. What do you guys think about the next couple of years? That's something that we don't really talk about very much, is not just what's happening right now and not just what could happen, but if we keep going at this pace, with everything that's going on, what does the next couple of years look like? Do people have a reason to be optimistic, or is it just a bad outlook all around?
Well, no, you just covered that in a recent video, so I'm sure that's fresh in your mind.
Yeah, but I think that, what do you think, Chris? What do you think the next couple of years are like?
Yeah, I try to think about that, and I run another business apart from being devoted, focusing on my YouTube channel. I have another company, and so we always have to try to look over the horizon to see what's next, so we can prepare for that, right? I mean, that's just part of owning businesses. And in the same way with this, it's interesting, the people that are coming out of the woodwork that I haven't heard from years are suddenly approaching me. They're finding me on YouTube, and they're like, "Wow, I've become a prepper." And a lot of people, I don't know. I mean, the reality is none of us can predict exactly what's coming, but the reality is, like you said, Brad, the sense of whether it's despair or a sense of uncertainty. And our generation, this is really unique. I mean, we grew up in a time of abundance. I had an older neighbor that grew up out here in California during World War II, and she had gone through the blackout. She had gone through, rubber and other things being in, you couldn't get at certain things. So she'd seen that, but we never really seen this in our generation. All that to say, I don't know if this is going to be a few years event while the supply chain gets backed up to speed. But like you said a second ago, Brad, about despair, yeah, I mean, there's a sense of unease, there's a sense of uncertainty, and that's not a good thing. We've always been, like gung ho. We know we're just going to charge forward, and now we're kind of, I think, on edge, wondering, kind of looking over the abyss, so to speak, over the cliff of we don't know what's next, and that's an odd feeling. And all I can say is, for me in my home, I'm starting to look at land seriously again. And my goal is, over the next few years, is to move toward a self-sufficiency setup. Even though I'm in the city and that's named my channel, that is kind of the evolution I see myself going over the next few years, to become more and more self-reliant. Yeah. But it's not going to be cheap, and it's not going to be easy. And I realize that. And the thing that sucks is I know a lot of people that's not going to be something they can easily do. Yeah.
What about you, Cliff? Because Washington or the West Coast there, or the Upper West Coast, you really have a different breed of people. Just like Florida's got a different breed of people, you got a different breed of people. What do you see as the local optimism or pessimism that's happening?
Yeah, so at least in the particular area that I'm in, and I've shared photos with you guys offline with regard to some of the stuff that I do, because I do a lot of stuff in the evening for different gatherings and stuff like that for my other life. But there's a lot more optimism, at least reporting from over here. I don't see as much of the despair, unless when I the farther away that I get out of the city, the more that you might see that. But I think for a lot of people, like Chris said, it's more just a sense of unease, a sense of nervousness. That generally there's an underlying thing that people are doing, but a lot of the people that I hang out with are family people, and if you have too much of that sense of despair and nervousness, it's going to rub off on your kids, and you don't want that, because really during all this times it could be really depressing if you're just focusing on all of that. So what I've been seeing, at least locally, and what we've tried to do is really try to cherish the silver linings with it. And one of them being that working from home all the time and able to be closer with my family, be able to be here for breakfast and for lunch and for dinner versus commuting, and then really appreciating that time that you have with people where you could actually see them smile without a mask on outside when you're going kayaking. So I think people up here for the most part are trying to keep fairly positive with it, but there's just that underlying sense of nervousness, I think.
Yeah. Nate, from, some people will be coming here from my channel, from Chris's channel, from Cliff's channel. I know you covered that kind of recently. Could you give everyone the Cliff notes of what you discussed, kind of what you see happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's changing from day to day, but just based on what Cliff had said with respect to being optimistic, there's always this social pressure to be an optimist and not to be a party pooper, right?
Right.
And, nobody wants to. Everybody loves to hear about this stuff on the internet, but when you're with other people, nobody wants to be talking about the end of the world.
Sure.
But I do actually think there is definitely within our community some despair, some pessimism, and I probably have contributed to that. But I view that as realism, and
Right.
that there is an old, like the status quo is overly optimistic, in my opinion, about the state of things right now.
Sure.
And I think part of the reason why people are so optimistic in the cities is because they're largely oblivious, to the world around them. Like it's almost like the more you're in the city, the less aware you are of where your stuff comes from, and all this kind of thing, and kind of how the world works. So no, I'm not very optimistic about the next 10 years. I don't think that, and I'm a person who considers all the variables. Like I consider, okay, maybe I'm being a little, too pessimistic about this particular issue. But when you look at the perfect storm of events that this last 18 months has shown us, like it's like 20 months now, we're seeing record droughts, which are causing food shortages. Okay, and this is projected to continue into the future. And it's not only in North America, it's everywhere around the world. We're seeing these east-west tensions rising. We're seeing fuel shortages, which they're saying are the result of political stuff, but we don't know how much of it is actually due to true material shortages and material scarcity. If it's material scarcity, then we got problems, right?
Yeah, right.
So there's a lot of these things which, I think it's easy to be optimistic. It's not hard to, look at what Tesla is doing. And I always go back to Tesla because that's like, in people's minds, that's the future, that's automation, it's robotics, it's all these things that are going to save us, nuclear fusion, there's a lot of things that could save the species.
Right.
But there's a lot that, there's going to be this bottleneck. And I think we've talked about this the last time. There's going to be, the big squeeze is coming.
Yeah.
And it feels as though if this last 18 months has shown us anything, it's that our system as it is right now is not equipped to deal with a large scale national or international crisis. And, we're talking about small things like that blockage in the strait. What was
strait? Yeah. Over in the strait. That's right. Yeah.
Right. With the ship that was turned sideways.
Yeah.
That was like the perfect example of how sensitive our supply chain is to disruptions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that was to happen on even a slightly higher order of magnitude, then we can see what sort of problems we're going to face. So yeah, I'm not very optimistic about the future.
Well, I think that
what I'm doing, I'll talk about later about what my plan is to deal with that.
I think that it's a thin line between optimism and denial, and then there's a thin line between pessimism and kind of dooming. And I think that you have to walk somewhere in between there, because it's unavoidable to look at the world right now, and with any degree of personal responsibility, that's responsibility for how much waste we each give off as far as the things that we do to contribute to problems. To have that responsibility and say, oh yeah, everything's fine, while we're still, drinking out of 30 plastic cups and throwing them on the side of the road and doing all these different kind of silly things that, we can either be in denial as a species or even as a society, or we can realize that we're facing a multifaceted threat and have to kind of own up to some of the things that we have to either get ready for or start to change in ourselves. And I think that a lot of people have a hard time accepting that real change, because we'd all be looking like Nate, and we'd be eating better and big, and my traps would be this big, because we'd be saying, okay, I know I need to do things better for myself, but we don't do it. So you know,
I
I
was
think,
just born like this. I don't do anything.
On that now.
Just genetics.
Yeah. No, I think you hit a good point, Brad. I mean, what I feel like is, you know, combining kind of what Nate said and what you're saying, I feel like we're living in a time where the chickens come home to roost. All the
Right.
things that we've done over the last, you know, whatever, 40, 50 years, decisions that have been made have kind of led us to this moment that we've tried to kick the can down the road. And like, I don't want to deal with this. Things that we know that we need to deal with, and we haven't. And they're now starting to come together and culminate into these, you know, again, as Nate said, the perfect storm. And it's so hard because with my channel, I'm trying to not slide down into a doom channel, but on the flip side, I have to be realistic about what we're facing. And yeah, you could watch the channel and be like, man, that guy's, you know, I see in the comments all the time, like, that's just, you know, fear porn, grifting, da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I don't know, man. It's like, here's what we're seeing. And we're trying to research this as a team. And we spend a lot of time behind the scenes really digging into this stuff. And one of the guys on my team that helps, you know, do a lot of the research, we were hanging out the other day, and he was like, he was kind of on edge. He was like having to smoke, because he's like, man, the more I dig into this stuff, the worse it looks. He's like, and he's not, his background was nothing like this. He's like, it's weird just when you start really looking at the big picture. There are some serious problems that are culminating right now that most people are, you know, you know, what's Kim Kardashian doing today? And it's like, you know, squirrel, you know, we run off over there when we have.
You know what she's doing?
Issues.
She's building bunkers. She was just on a video with Atlas Survival Shelters. Just
Nice.
FYI.
Well, I'm glad you're following. I know you're a big guy.
So even Kim Kardashian is building a doomsday bunker. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no. I mean, so it's, I don't know. There's a lot of things that are playing out. You have to find that balance as a channel. Not that we're talking about that, but it is tough right now.
you know, I think that that's an important thing to look at. You know, you said Kim Kardashian's building bunkers right now. And I think that we've allowed what kind of you talked about, Chris, the sins of our father, you know, the sins of our fathers in society before us to create a path that was unsustainable at best. But we're also born into this trap of an economy. And I think a lot of people aren't happy with the end game there. They just, you know, they're not happy with knowing that that's what they have to do to just struggle to survive, and the knowledge that things are going to get harder. So when people look at that and they say, you mean I also have to think about growing my own food or buying some land or paying off my car or doing any of these things, it becomes a pretty daunting task. How do you, Cliff or Nate or Chris, anybody think someone can sort of handle that? Is it something they need to throw their entire life at, or should they just find something and start, you know, notching away at it?
In my opinion, it just takes that first step to do it. In my channel, I've always tried to, I don't really cover current events, so I'm kind of like the odd person out on this one, because I try to bring in those new people that might get scared off a little bit from going full prepper. Yeah, never go full prepper. But for me, I feel like you need those kind of gateway topics or prepper adjacent topics, that someone that might have some similarities that run in parallel to the preparedness mindset, where you might be able to bring them into that way, whether it be the lady down the street that has a tomato garden. You might be able to get her to start expanding that into other areas of preparedness. And I think EDC is a cool one for guys, because they like gear and they like stuff in their pockets, and and we've all been inspired by folks like MacGyver. So I think that's also a good one. But that's just kind of what I think right now.
Yeah, just do something.
Yeah,
okay.
Just that first step.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that you know, we're all kind of serving a different level of prepper or type of prepper. You know, I think we all attempt, and some better than others, to appeal to a broad audience, to make content which I would say is shareable. And I think that's the main thing when you're trying to broaden your audience, is ensuring that the content is shareable. And I posed this question to my audience in the last video I made. You know, what is a piece of content that you would be comfortable sharing with other people?
Yeah.
Because I think that's a sticking point for a lot of our channels is, okay, I'm talking about, you know, guilty as charged. You know, I kind of, I can be a bit overt with my titles with respect to, you know, like I think the last one was called "The Next 10 Years Will Be Hell," because I think it will be. You know, I could maybe tone it down a bit, and it would be a more shareable video. People would be more comfortable sharing that. So, but with respect to what was your question again about
Yeah, what can people do? They don't want to get overwhelmed. Should they just do something, or should they throw their whole life at getting ready for this, series of events?
I really like what Cliff said about taking that first step, because that's really all you can do. And then it will kind of just grow from there. And it can actually be a great learning process, because there's so much to learn. It can be fun in a way, because you're developing a new set of skills. And I don't sit there and wallow in despair.
Sure,
I don't want
right.
people to think that, you should always aspire to self-improve. And we all have kids, that's why we're doing what we're doing. And, so I would never say that, I think that's just motivation to be like, hey, and to acknowledge that you're still early to the party, with
right.
respect to prepping. I mean, there's maybe 5% of the population that really is giving this a serious look. I mean, you have people who've jumped on board in the last 18 months, but they've only kind of just got their feet wet. And a lot of them have, okay, they went and built a bug out bag quickly, and that was it,
Right.
So you're really still early to the party. If you're really going to take self-reliance seriously, you're going to be in a very small minority of people still. And there's still time, is what I'm saying. It's not like urgent, imminent. I know we sometimes, we talk about the imminence of why we need to prepare, but it's better that you're too early than too late. So that's why I truly try to push that.
Speaking of your titles, I think that there's a certain amount of, I would say badassery in owning up to the acknowledgement of the way things are right now. And so I think a person can take a certain amount of respect in that to say, okay, well, we know what we're facing. And, I guess it's that two different forms. Some people will write a letter to their senator and hope that they read it one day about how bad the taxes are or whatever it might be. And then another person will go up and protest, or they'll do something, they'll stand up against it. And I think that, that's sort of viewed on the channel. We know that we're facing a pretty daunting future. So let's own it and let's do something about it,
Mhm.
But, you talked about being behind the curve. I get told that a lot. People say, if you haven't been doing this for 10 years, there is no chance for you. And I think that's a really fatalistic viewpoint. And I try to tell people, does that mean that all of the grannies in Syria died during the civil war? Absolutely not. So don't let it be like you have to do this and you have to have been doing a certain amount. Just do something and make good friends and try to get ahead.
One of the things I always get is from the urban prepper. I always, if you're in the city, you're gonna, it's too late. You got to get out of there. So that's like the common one for me. So for me, I think preparedness is something that whether you're in downtown New York or if you're in Montana somewhere, there's different preparedness measures that you could take and to be better prepared. And no one's going to be like the ultimate prepper, I don't think, except for maybe Nate, because he has the warehouse with all the supplies right now. So, but
that's a good
yeah, but
no.
And I was going to say on the video titles, like if you don't name it that title, did you make the video? Like some people aren't going to be able to see that video that has the content that might inspire them to change their life, to get into preparedness, and so you need to have something to get them in there. So I don't have no problem with that kind of thing. So
yeah, like just to add to what you're saying there about people in the city, I said in a recent video that the goal is to kind of get out of the city, but you make a valid point that to be a person who is prepper conscious in the city is rare. So even if there was a crisis or a disaster, you're already in that mindset where, you're seeing things from a different perspective than a lot of people. So even though you're going to be surrounded by a lot of desperate people, you'll still have that supreme advantage. And a lot of people, like, let's face it, you can't just leave the city and uproot your life. And, there's
like a lot of it's job and
Sure.
Yeah.
For me, it's like Training Day, Denzel Washington, where he's giving the big speech to Ethan Hawke about change. You got to change it from the inside, son. And so that's how I gotta change the thinking from the inside within my region. So
yeah. And I'm sure that you guys have seen some of the journalistic footage of the places that are undergoing extreme change, whether it's social change or things that are happening in their economy, that those inner city, you'll have an entire apartment complex that kind of comes together. And sure, they don't have all the same ideals or anything, but there's a couple of guys who don't work that sit down at the door at the front, and you're not allowed into this place unless they know you or you're somebody said that you're coming, and they sort of self-police there. So I don't think that just because you're in one location or another is better or worse. I mean, I would probably sleep better knowing that a couple of guys, with AKs are down below, not letting anybody in, than I would in the middle of nowhere, hoping my dogs are barking at a person and not a squirrel,
Yeah.
I think the sweet spot's in the suburbs, to be honest. But yeah, just like what we kind of said about there's two different sizes and then there's the middle. I think with your location is probably maybe similar. But although I would like to be in, at least have some property that is way out away from everything. So,
what do you guys think of gated communities?
Are they guarded or just gated?
Well, I mean, gated could potentially be easier guarded than your usual cul-de-sac or crescent.
I'll let Chris handle this.
I'll join a gated community with you guys, though. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if you're in a gated community and you create, different points of access that are limited, the rest of it's walled off, obviously you have an advantage there. I mean, if something goes down and you assign people to watch, the entrances, but I don't know. I mean, I hate to overgeneralize here, but typically people that are in those environments may be, really wealthy and maybe toward the older age, at least that's what I've noticed. And I don't know how, it's like how well they're going to be able to prepare, or be in a position to defend or again,
stereotypes.
I hate to stereotype. I'm sorry, but
these Californians in your stereotypes.
I don't know. That's what I think when I hear gated communities. I mean, I've lived in an area with a few years ago, we lived in an area, a lot of land, but it was HOA and it was very communal. And, I mean, it was nice because we had one road in and out. And so if something went down, you could guard that pretty easily. So, I've done some evaluations and videos on my, channel about that kind of thing, creating those choke points. But yeah, I could definitely see some advantages. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like what you're saying, Brad. I mean, if you have a community, that's what's going to be critical at the end of the day.
So what about what can we do right now today? What can anybody start doing to mitigate those things that we are looking at in the future? Whether it's, do you think that we need to take this all the way back to preparedness 0 and everyone should just make sure that their self is prepared first? Like Nate's a very big advocate of eating right, going out to the gym, getting your body strong, but somebody else might have an idea to make sure their pantry is stocked. Should we go back to that level of 0 and sort of advocate that? Or, what do you guys think?
Man, that's a tough one. I mean, I'm trying to work on a series of videos right now because I've always wanted to do, like how do you prep in a year's time frame? Where do you start? Because it's overwhelming because there's so much information within this community. A lot of good information, a lot of, unfortunately, not so good. But I mean, for the most part, there's a lot of useful information. But it's hard when you try to, take it all in and try to synthesize it and where do I implement this on a practical level? And, for me, what I'm looking at is kind of a timeline mentality of developing what are things you can do now? What can you do next? And it just comes down to starting somewhere, kind of like we were talking about a second ago. When I first started out, I had to go grab the bug out bag, I had to build that out. And I mean, what was the point of that? Nothing. If something were to happen, that would have been not very useful, if I was being honest, but it's establishing those basics of food, water, medical, getting to a point where you have a buffer starting out 2 weeks. I used to read a series of financial books by an author that he took you on a timeline to help you become financially independent. And I followed it back in 2007 and it worked. It was motivational and it kept me going. And that's kind of what I'm hoping I can bring eventually to the community. But that's the thing that's challenging right now because it can feel so overwhelming when you start out and you see everything that's out there on the horizon. You're like, where in the heck do I even begin with this? My encouragement is that first step. You've got to start somewhere.
Would you mind sharing anything that you're sort of doing to mitigate the risks that you see ahead or what you're working on?
I mean, us personally, again, we're doing what all of us and what we always tell people to do on our channel is, continuing to build food reserves, water reserves, trying to expand those out in different ways. Again, looking for property. That's kind of a next stage of the evolution that I want to go on, but that's going to take time to build that out. Obviously, we're working on gardening. We had a very successful year. We overproduced. We didn't even know it. We had so much.
Awesome.
We were like, wow, what do we do with this in a very small suburban environment? We have chickens. We've got different things that I'm like, okay, we would be all right for, a month or two in this home if everything got cut off. I mean,
yeah, right.
That's better than nothing. I mean, you're going to better form some alliances quickly with neighbors and get to know your neighbors. But at the end of the day, we would be all right. And obviously I wouldn't extend that period out even further. But yeah, I mean, those are the steps we're taking and continuing to grow. And I have been for years.
What about you, Cliff? What are you doing on a personal level to mitigate it?
Well, I was going to say really quick for those that are just starting off, that happen to watch this video, start off with your pantry and start off with water and go for a month. And then next go for try to get your medications for a month if you happen to take prescription medications. Because that, for me, that's what I'm most worried about. And one of the things I'm actively doing now is because I had cancer when I was 20, and because of that, a lot of bad effects that happened to my body, which one of those being congestive heart failure. So I'm on a bunch of different heart medications, and no matter, I could be the best prepper in the world with food and security and comms and all of that. But if I run out of the heart pills, then you're kind of screwed. So that's one of the things that I've been fortunately found out that my GP is a follower of my channel. So then I'm able to I've been working with him as far as
good. Yeah,
getting my my medical stash into place. So and there's so many in an urban environment, you'd be surprised how many people are preppers and that you would never know it. They're like undercover preppers. But I think the thing that I'm actively working on and have been for a year now is getting much better with my pressurized canning for foods, especially for meats, because I don't have a farm. There's not a cow in the backyard. I have some raccoons maybe, but I'm trying to build up that stash, get better with it, get it better with the organization, because I could get all of the non-perishable stuff that us typical preppers typically get, as far as rice and beans and canned items and all those kind of things. But we're meat eaters too. Sorry for any vegans watching, but we only eat vegan animals. But but I'm trying to get much better at that. It's a skill that I find a lot of value for, and it's kind of addicting, and it's a fun, a relaxing project too. So that's what I'm actively working on right now for myself.
Well, I didn't know that about your heart condition, so I appreciate you sharing that with me. Knowing that risk for your own personal SHTF crisis possibility, have you explored any like stopgap measures, things that will sort of allow you to extend medication or anything like that?
I've looked at various ways of rationing and stuff like that, but if someone has a good idea for that, I'd gladly take that. I take other supplements as well to help with that. I can show my scar. I've never showed it, I don't think, on the web, but you can see I had open chest surgery when I was 20 years old. So that was really a big wake-up call for me, because when you're 20, you think that you're invincible, and then I'm in college at the time, and hey, by the way, you got cancer and you got to start chemo on Monday. So and then 3 months later, I was having open heart surgery to remove a tumor from on top of my heart. And so it kind of, for me, that was a big wake up call that I'm not immortal. I'm like, you could be taken out at any time. And I think that helped kind of light a fuse early on to then start getting with the preparedness measures for that. But long story short, I just try to build up my buffer on the things that I need to survive just for my body.
I think a part of what we can do with this channel is kind of leverage the reach and leverage the community. So, I think we can do that for a lot of different ways. And we might have viewers that are watching right now that have found, medicines or alternatives that have helped them. What does your medication do for you? And maybe somebody in the comments can leave a comment like, hey, I've had this. I know, here's some sound research, look it up.
Yeah.
As long as it's not used on horses, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
One of those dewormers now.
Let's not go there.
So is the medication that you take like a thinner, or what is it?
I have a few different ones. It's mainly for ejection fraction. So sorry to give all this information out, but basically your heart pumps out a certain volume of blood per pump. And naturally mine is very, due to the chemotherapy, is like 35% when it should be like 65 to 70%. So part of it's for high blood pressure, part of it's for the ejection fraction.
Okay. And, So if anybody has any sound comments with, .gov research or .edu research, leave them down in the comments.
Yes. And I do all the CoQ10 and all the supplements and stuff. Since COVID, I've been I take so many pills, it's crazy. So I put a lot of garlic and CoQ10 and oil of oregano and turmeric
Well,
and all sorts of stuff.
Do you
Elderberry.
notice a difference? Like,
Yeah.
does it feel good to do it? Okay.
Yeah, and I don't typically get sick, so I just get
Okay.
big sick. I get cancer sick, but then other than that, I'm pretty good. So
None of that,
Yeah.
none of that wimpy sick.
I just agree. I never did get open heart surgery. Yeah, I knew you shared about cancer, but wow, that's that's pretty
Intense.
That's intense, yeah. Nate, I mean,
Nate,
I guess we're on the subject of physical fitness. Yeah, Nate, I mean, you're the resident in-house guy for that. I mean, I've seen plenty of videos of you with your shirt off, so I know you can speak to this.
he doesn't have dad bod, that's for sure.
You don't, man.
I've been trying to avoid it. I've been pushing it off and pushing it off. No, I've been blessed to not have health problems like that. Like, yeah, you know, on the one hand, it's kind of good to be, I don't want to say it's good, but it's to be faced with your own mortality as a motivational tool in a sense. And I think there's a lot to be said for that perhaps isn't immediately apparent, you know, to have those experiences where you are, you know, you're looking at, you know, I could go, right? Like I've never had that because I've, you know, I've been in relatively good health, knock on wood. Anything can happen even if you're healthy. Even me, like, you know, I could get the call tomorrow, you know, so I'm not naive to the fact that, oh, just because I'm in good shape doesn't mean that, you know, I'm going to be immune to these things happening. But I would say that physical health, if the goal is survival, you know, to me, it's to survive as long as possible so that you can be a good influence on your progeny for as long as possible, to maximize your influence on the world. So I always start with physical fitness because it's the thing that you're trying to protect. And I don't judge anybody for it, but, you know, if I see somebody who is not taking care of their health and they're stockpiling 5-10 years worth of food, you know, for me, it's like, are your priorities in the right place? You know, if you're going to potentially get some kind of disease as a result of not taking care of yourself, and that doesn't mean you have to be an Olympian. That doesn't mean you have to be, you know, aspiring to be a Baywatch extra or something like that. You know, it just means that, you know, you're acknowledging that, you know, you are what you eat. And for thousands of years, people survived by hard-ass, laborious physical work, and everybody was ripped. Even if you go back and you look at some video footage of New York in the 1970s, everybody was skinny.
Cocaine.
Like, it's amazing. And if you go back further, everybody was even skinnier. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So you're even seeing that with this current disease that is going around. It's affecting a lot of people with those pre-existing health conditions. And so that would be my thing. Is it's a cheap way to start, is focus on your physical health. Then of course, like all you guys have said, you know, stockpile your meds, focus on your food and water storage, you know, and then you can get into prepping and enjoy it in its fullest sense. But I think that's an easy place to start. And in terms of stockpiling, you know, all of those things are good. Having a garden, you know, I garden and just pulled up some potatoes the other day, had a pretty decent haul of potatoes. But at the same time, I mean, it costs very little right now to get a lot. And what I mean by that is like $40 bag of rice. I don't know what it is there, but I mean, $40 for 60,000 calories is incredible. Like, if things got bad, you would never find that in nature for the amount of energy that you have to expend to get it. So I say stock it to the rafters while you can, and, you know, use what you're stocking, obviously, but take advantage of what the grid has to offer in terms of fresh produce from all over the world. You know, I mean, take advantage of all that while you can, and all of the health systems and all of that, and just go hard on your health, man, because it's the number one thing. Nobody can take it away from you. And then after that, you know, look at skill building and stockpiling and all the rest.
But I know the people in the comments are probably going to say, well, knowledge is the #1 prep that you should do. So, and so we have to address that. But
Yeah.
I think we're talking about what they could get. So,
And
So,
you know, you have to think about what's carrying the brain around. It's
Yeah.
your body.
Yeah.
So Nate, what are you doing personally? Do you have any areas that you're mitigating the risk of the future on a personal level?
Yeah, I mean, everything, you know, we go over that on the channel. I mean, just like you guys, every week we're talking about a different prepping topic. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to go look at some land. I've been
Okay.
putting off the acquisition of land because I'm the kind of person, when I make a decision, I want it to be the right decision. I don't want to have to change my mind in a few years.
Yeah.
So I want to, I've been very picky with the land that I choose. So, and up here, land is abundant. So you can get an 80 acre, 160 acres at not a huge premium over, you know, like you can get that for the same price that you'd buy a
house
mansion in the
town.
city
Yeah.
for.
Can you get
Yeah.
like a well, or what does it cost, you know, to build that on there? Have you looked into that?
I mean, you could do that. You could do a lot of things, you know, geothermal, but the problem up here is the weather. Fortunately, we've been getting really high temperatures lately, very unseasonably high temperatures, so much so that we have fires taking place out of season. We have droughts. So we do have a high water table where I live. So there's water under the ground deep, but not above ground anymore. And yeah, so there's, you know, there's potential to do a greenhouse agriculture here in the winter time and stuff like that. So I'm looking into those things. And actually there's a person who I'm going to be shooting a video with pretty soon who's going to show off their setup, which is geared towards how can you grow food at this latitude throughout the entire winter months.
Oh, it's awesome. You know,
When
that's
you're going to
something.
get land. I've been waiting for that.
Yeah, and that's something I think everybody's. Cliff, you mentioned you would love to find somewhere. Chris, you said you're looking. Nate, you said you're looking, and even my wife and I, you know, we're looking for that next piece, you know, because we live on a very small, frugal bit of land right now, just a couple of acres. So we're like, wow, wouldn't that be nice to, you know, have that larger bit of land where you can just expand and do so much more. You know, as a lot of our community members and the people watching are probably thinking the same thing. They're also racing the fact that this housing, you know, bubble is just going up at unsustainable levels. And do they wait for the crash to make those purchases, or do they kind of, you know, start those things off now? And I know one of the things we wanted to talk about was what's happening in China with Evergrande and how that could even start to affect our future here, you know, in our housing ability in the US and Canada. So what do you guys think about, you know, should a person, in my opinion, you should be ready to take advantage of opportunity and just let that be your deciding factor. You know, and so that's kind of like, we don't want to pour all of our night and day. And I'm like you, Nate, I don't so much not want to make the wrong decision. I would deal with that more than I hate the, maybe I'll get this one, maybe it's beautiful, and then something else happens, somebody else bought it. I hate that kind of up and down of, you know, the searching process. It feels like, you know, teenager dating all over again. So, you know, what do you think? Should people just go at it and try to find that piece, or, you know, what are your experiences there?
That's a tough one. Dave, do you want to speak to that? I mean, that's something I've been.
No, you
really
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know that you're right up my alley, because I'm really struggling with this right now, because where I live, land is just, you know, it's jumping. I'm sure it's probably not too different where you guys are at, you know, saw a 25, 30, or actually 35% jump over, you know, this last year.
Yeah.
We had a piece of land up the hill from us, 5 acres. We lived on it for 2 years. You know, actually Cliff got to come and stay with us. We had a vineyard. It was a beautiful piece of property. But just had a lot of different challenges, HOA, yada, yada. And at that time, it was the right decision to sell it. I don't have any regrets, but we sold at a certain price here, and it's already jumped up that 35%. And we're looking at, you know, what the real estate market is predicting over the next, you know, year, and it's just going to keep climbing. But to your point, Brad, I mean, what if Evergrande, you know, takes a dump? You know, what's next, right? We're all worried about that next event, you know, we lived through 2008. We saw that. We saw how things can just quickly go like that. And that's my fear, is I don't want to get a piece of property right now and be upside down. A year later, it drops 50%. Because if I get a piece of property out here, it's probably, you know, 5 acres where I live in Southern California. I mean, we're minimum probably gonna have to come in at $1 million, minimum. And, obviously I've been fortunate to accrue equity over house purchases over the years, and it keeps rolling up, and I can roll a lot of that in, but still that's painful to think, what if I buy $1 million property
and it's
that's
worth
not that
450.
great?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then 6 months later, everything dumps and it's worth $500,000, and I've got those payments, and
right.
so I don't know. I reached out to another prepper. She has a real estate company, and her position was, look, I mean, what does that land provide you? What can you get from it now if things continue on this path? Can you survive on that? And if you can service that debt, because where I live, Southern Cal, the land is it's getting, just more and more and more demand each year.
Yeah.
So I can only say for my area what I know here. So I would encourage anybody that's on the fence about this, talk to somebody, maybe a realtor that they're not going to work with. Maybe they pay up front. They say, look, you're not going to get you're not going to get the work from me. Yeah, because so there's no interest in you selling me on this, but you're going to have to find somebody, hopefully, that you can trust that will guide you in this. But that's a hard answer right now because nobody's got a crystal ball, and it just seems like my fear personally is inflation. That if it just keeps climbing, I'm more worried about inflation than I am a collapse at this point.
Okay.
And so yeah, I've actually had to move a lot of things into assets that are hopefully going to outpace just cash sitting, because it's cash sitting in the bank right now is just an ice cube melting. So that's where I personally see where I'm looking is more of an inflationary perspective.
See, I'm on the other side of that, and I'm more concerned with, I guess it's maybe because I live in sort of a more frugal, I guess would be the politically correct way to say it, part of Alabama. And so, I could find that land and I could find it relatively cheap, $1,200 an acre, $1,000 an acre if you get enough. My bigger concern is that, I would be putting myself financially, towards something that in maybe 6 months, I mean, they're saying Evergrande could default on the 18th of this month. They just missed their third round of bond payments, and it's just a matter of how infectious that becomes. Does confidence get lost in the general economy because they made their payments to China, but they missed their payments to all the international marketplaces? So do we start seeing this trend over and over again? So my concerns on the flip side of, if I do find that piece that maybe offers double the acreage, I'm putting myself towards it, but then it's worth less. So my suggestion, I guess, for myself and anybody who's in a similar position is to make sure that your financial investment and the return on your investment, as far as what you can do on that piece of land, is worth it falling apart financially. If it's worth it falling apart, but you'll have your 1 acre garden, you'll have your area for your free range chickens, you'll have all of that, security, well, then I'd say go ahead and go with it.
I feel that when it comes to land purchases, that the way that I've at least looked at it is that it should be tied to family, I believe, because you see all these families that have the family cabin, we've had it over the years, and it doesn't seem to matter about when there's gas shortages in the 70s or in 2008, that was their place that they went to. And eventually, oftentimes they go there every summer, maybe, or every other summer. Then they're going every month, and now some of they're going every weekend. Then it might become your new homestead over time. But I think if it's tied into some kind of, it's not solely purchased for emergency survival apocalypse situation, but it's tied into a family retreat that you could expand upon, and that eventually you might be able to see yourself being there more full-time. That seems like it might help go with not get affected as much with all the dips and rises and stuff that happens.
You're talking about a long-term perspective. And I mean, real estate, they're not making any more of it, right? I mean, as long as you can, if you take a long-term perspective, you'll be fine. And to Brad's point, if Evergrande does default and the market dumps 20% over the next couple of months, it would hurt. But if you're looking at, something you're passing down to your children and their children, then it's a totally different perspective.
Yeah. And I don't think you should rush into any kind of decision. I like thinking of the long-term decision. So
yeah, agreed.
Yeah. What about you, Nate? Have you kind of taken the same considerations, or are things a little bit different up there?
I mean, our economy is tied to yours. Not so sure about the housing situation. Kind of like Chris said, generally speaking, real estate goes up over time. And like he said, they're not making any more of it. And we happen to live in countries where people are immigrating to. Therefore, you would presume that the cost of property would be in greater and greater demand. Right. So interestingly, I was talking with Ron from Atlas Survival Shelters. He came by the shop here the other day, and he was talking about how his bunkers are actually built to last many generations. So they're not just meant to last, for 20 years and they're going to flood or rot or rust or whatever. But, that really got me thinking about kind of what Cliff is saying as a
lineage,
family generational.
It's an heirloom bunker.
Yeah, where you're not really concerned about, the fluctuations from year to year even.
Right.
Because you bought the land, you were willing to pay that amount of money for it. And but yeah, like Chris says, I mean, I'm not sure how inflation might actually be a good thing depending on your interest rate of your home, but I don't know enough to speak to that. But I'm just thinking, like, if the price, I mean, you agree to mortgage at a certain price, and if inflation is higher than that, then I think you would be winning in that situation. But if the housing market crashes, then I guess you would be losing. But yeah, I guess if you look at it multi-generationally, and that's what I'm kind of going for, is if I buy something, I want it to be the thing that I'm going to keep. If it so happens that circumstances change, then of course, and we unfortunately, we live in a society today where people are just generally more transient. So people are working different jobs. So circumstances are changing more often. But the good side is that now with Zoom and all this technology, you can make a living from home. So more people are going to be able to do that sort of thing. So yeah, my long-term strategy, is just to find a piece of land that I'm willing to keep for many years, hopefully decades, and possibly generations. I mean, because like I said initially, land in North America is going to become increasingly more scarce. So
generational preps then instead of wealth.
Yeah, that's
generational preps.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Is I don't think real estate is the best generational tool to pass wealth. It's a good one. It's not the best, but yeah, I mean, as long as you can service, especially if in California they have Prop 13, which prevents the taxes from going up with the value, because property goes up so fast that if Granny bought a property 30 years ago, she wouldn't be able to pay the taxes, at retirement kind of thing. And so they did that to protect against that. But not all states are like that. So fortunately, we have that going for us here. If I buy land for $1 million and it goes up to 5 million in 20 years, I'm not having to pay at that 5 million rate. But not all states are going to like that. Taxes are the thing that will ultimately beat you up. But, again, Nate, you made an excellent point. I mean, people are moving here. It's desirable. And I can't see a downside at the moment, unless there's just some major, black swan event. It just completely, again, a 2008 event. But the markets are different. I'm not saying they're secure by any means, but it is a different market now than then. And but again, don't take that to the bank. Don't say, hey, Chris said, therefore
we're not offering financial advice here in this video.
Financial advice.
Disclaimer.
No, I mean, anything could happen, and I know that. But on the flip side of the coin, we all can face that paralysis by analysis. It's like you get so tied up in like this, and that could happen, and you do nothing. And I think that's the worst thing anybody could do, especially when it comes to prepping, is to get tied up in fear and just freeze,
Yeah, right.
It's like, just move one way or another and, educate yourself, but make a decision. Don't hold still. That's the worst thing you could do.
Well, I think we have a pretty good economic or financial wheel between all of us, from different prices of land and availability of things that we can do on a personal level, all the way from the bottom, upwards. If we flip what we've been talking about all the way to the bottom, and you've got people who are just struggling right now, and that's really, I think, what we wanted to get across with this first video, was maintaining hope in an age of uncertainty. If people, because let's face it, somebody could be making $400,000 a year and they're spending $450,000. They're as broke as a guy who's making $30,000 a year and spending $35,000. So if some of our audience members are on that low side, something that I think gets asked a lot is, they're trying to cut all the corners they can. They're coupon clipping, they're buying in bulk, they're doing all those things. The one thing they haven't done yet is moved in with family or moved in with somebody else to kind of rent share or cost share that burden. Do you guys think that from a prepper side of point of view, or prepper side of things, if I'm bringing my ammunition and stuff over into Susie Q's house because she's going to be my rental partner, she's probably going to call the cops by week 2. So, what do you think should a person do there? Is that a viable option for them, to sort of save up that money to either pay off their car or get a piece of land? Or do you think that's really risky from an operational security or a prepper's point of view?
So are you asking financially, what should they prioritize first if they're on the low end as far as on a tight budget? Where should they start at least?
Well, I guess my main question is if they're group sharing something, whether that's they're sharing a garden, they're sharing an apartment rent, they're sharing all these things, is that something that a prepper really wants to do? Or should they hold on to those things as their sole responsibility and bear the financial burden of paying their own rent, paying their own car, doing those things? Is there a risk in them moving in with mom and dad or moving in with their brothers and sisters, just from a prepper side?
I feel that prepping should be, I don't think I would want to do that as far as combining forces with, even with my mom, we'd probably butt heads a lot, but I kind of see prepping as a service, like almost like a software service where you provide your particular service, and you might have a lot more services than others. And that's where the whole bartering thing comes in with prepping. And you could do that on a neighborhood basis, whether you have a neighborhood watch and you're providing a service for that, or you're sharing, I live in the suburbs now, and we do sharing of vegetable produce that we make, and chicken eggs and stuff like that. So I kind of feel like everyone should have like what their specialty is, and then that specialty is going to have value. But as far as joining forces with, you have ammo and you have comms and you have your doctor, let's all live in the same place. That might be tough for me.
I think so too. And it's funny you said that about sharing a service. We had recently put up some new multi-strand barbed wire and a hot wire around some fence line, and it wasn't a week before one of my neighbors said, "Hey, I'm going out of town. Can I pay you to park my four-wheeler there? Because you just don't want to leave it at home out in the open." I was like, "No, you don't need to pay me." But obviously people took note of, well, that's a little bit more of a secure environment. I don't have that yet. Could I just ask him if I could leave it there for a couple of days while I go on vacation? So I think staying open to that kind of thing is probably pretty beneficial from a relationship side of things.
Yeah, it's something that, because our community is typically a lot of lone wolfers and there's a lot of paranoia. And I just did a poll on my channel this week asking about that. Do you trust your neighbors? And it's one of my most voted polls. I think it's up to 20 some odd thousand. I was kind of surprised at feedback. And it gave me a lot of insight. We're going to be talking about OPSEC this week a lot. And, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, you're going to need community if something really goes sideways. You're not going to be, it's very unlikely you're going to be an island to yourself. At least not for very long. You're gonna have to quickly learn how to work together. So if you can begin to start building relationships, and again, I always encourage people, obviously, if you're just walking up like, "Hey, I'm a prepper, do you want to be in?" I mean, of course that would freak someone out, and it'd freak me out. But learning, like you said, I think that's awesome what Cliff has, that communal aspect. And if you can build that, I think you're starting off on a good starting point for sure.
How about the all-American prepper? Is he?
Where's he at? Is he?
Hell no.
I got my
It's a death sentence, man. No, you're talking about people who have limited resources, and I think we live in a culture, the nuclear family, which is more isolationist. We live in an individualistic culture where that sort of thing, people are very apprehensive. But if you look at other cultures around the world, I mean, there's plenty where people are, 10 to a room, and, extended family is everything. So we may actually drift into that if economic times get hard enough, where, like you're saying, Brad, people may be forced to bunk up, just like we did at university. We had to live with 6 or 7 people, and that could be very beneficial because people are an incredible asset. And I mean, people are gear that keeps on giving in a way. Like if you're a prepper who likes to stockpile gear, like the ultimate gear is a person, really, So, but there's definitely going to be group dynamics, group politics, trust issues. And I'm releasing a video tomorrow about how to detect liars and deception and
nice.
stuff. So it's definitely an important topic, but I think that's a great idea that you had and a great suggestion for people who are in limited resources, because we're going to get to a point where housing is just going to be so prohibitive for anybody to own their own home, and you know the cost of everything is going to go up. So yeah, if you can find people that you trust, and I don't think it has to be like people who are like us, you know, we're middle class, upper middle class, whatever, you know, started obviously really poor, some of us,
right.
but you know, I think there's a bit more of a risk to, like Cliff said, you know, just starting a big prepper community. Like I get
Sure,
messages all the time from people who want to start a community, and I'm always kind of like apprehensive about just jumping in with that,
Yeah, right.
because you know, just because you're a prepper doesn't mean we're going to get along, and it doesn't mean, you know, where there's not going to be different interpersonal issues that arise. So you really have to be careful. It's nice if, and I'm not a religious person, but I know for some people, that's a bond which can kind of trump any other differences. So there's a lot of communities, preparedness related, that really are cohesive around that. But there has to be some kind of, it seems like there has to be some bond, be it familial, affinal, or I want to say political, because then that kind of gets a little culty.
Yeah, right.
You know, even if there's just that religious bond between people or whatever, there has to be something there, because we live in a culture which is antithetical to community. So that's why I brought up gated community, because it's kind of like it's a community, but it's not a community.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah, I think that's something that we, like you said, on people, you're going to see grandmas living with the grandchildren and all of the generations in between before too long. And I think we're starting to see just a little glimpse of that today. But, you know, when Cliff mentioned, you know, just bringing together a whole bunch of preppers, I'm sure each of our channels get lots of people saying, you know, where can I come and park an RV on your property? And that's just not, you know, that's not a situation.
I don't think it should be. I don't think they could be pure preppers. I think they have to be prepper adjacent, because pure preppers, they don't mesh. Maybe not. But I think if you have just people along, like what Nate was saying, with some kind of tie between them, I think that your kids is like if you have a community, a school community that's pretty close knit, that your kids could be that's the future, and that's the reason that I'm prepping, and that's the reason why, you know, why I want to continue to live and provide. So I think that could be a common bond for people, with or without any kind of religious affiliation.
Yeah,
I think you hit on family, and that's, you know, in line with what Nate was talking about. I mean, I've lived in a lot of third world developing nations where family was everything. And when you come back to the States, we all want our separate rooms. We all want, you know, we want our privacy. And when I was in Afghanistan we had a lot of Filipinos on our team, and their experience working with other Westerners it was really shocking to them, because they were so used to community. And a lot of Westerners would go off in their room in the evening and not, you know, deal with them. They didn't want to interact.
Yeah.
And we have a house on our street in our neighborhood that a large family has moved in together. There's a lot of cars. I mean, they're quiet, they're good people, no issues. I think some people are apprehensive at first, but I think that's probably going to be more and more what we'll see in the future. And, you know, when it comes down to it, and I always get crap for this on my channel. People are like, why are you in Southern California? Why are you in California at all? And that's the number one thing I have to tell them is family. Because if it all falls apart,
you're going to be with
things
family.
really get worse. Do I really want to be away from family?
Right.
And, you know, so yeah, that's everything to what we value in our home.
I could totally see where it goes to like a family or prepping time sharing type thing, where I used to have my boss, his grandma would stay at their place for a year, and she would provide a service. Normally, she's a really awesome cook, and then she'd be at his place, and then the next year she'd be at their place. I could see something along those lines. If there was like a grid down situation that was family oriented, where everyone kind of had to bunker in place. And for me, that's like, you're going to trust the family the most, like even like the bestest of friends or whatever. You never know. So
yeah, that's good. I know that we were trying to keep this to around an hour on our first video release, and kind of let our community dictate what we do, or kind of shape what we do from there. But I wanted to ask something, because I know a lot of people are thinking about, you know, what's important to them right now as far as their next purchase. And I wanted to ask each one of you what your next purchase, what's important to you, what's on that list that you're trying to either get or, achieve. And I'm talking a buyable purchase, something you can go on Amazon, Nate's store, whatever it might be, and make that purchase.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah, let's see.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I have most of the small stuff. Obviously land you kind of need land to have a lot of the big stuff. You need a place to put solar panels. You need a place to put a snowmobile. You need so I think land is really the big thing, because I have everything else, obviously. I have
Well, yeah,
everything
you'd be good for a minute with your supplies there.
A few lifetimes worth right there.
If I could defend it, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
But I actually know, I've tried to get in good with some of the local authorities and stuff too, just to,
make sure they could keep an eye on the shop. Yeah.
Yeah. I help them, they help me.
Have you made and tell me if you don't want to go this far, but have you made any sort of like a contingency plan that if you had to, throw your stuff in a U-Haul truck or whatever Canada has for U-Hauls, and take it somewhere, do you kind of have a list of things you'd be trying to grab and take?
Well, I think when it came down to it, food would be the main thing. I mean, food is everything. The gear, you get your gas mask if it's depending on what type of scenario it is. Your bug out bag, but the only thing in bulk would be the food would be the most important.
Okay. I know for me personally, I've used the Berkey as a water filter, as a whole house filter for the last 8 years. But I've never used reverse osmosis, and that's something that I'm looking to try out. Have any of you ever used it?
I got a bid for it the other day, but if we're going to move, I don't want to invest in sticking it into the house, because it was a significant amount of money, and it was like, I'm not going to pull that out if we move.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't know. For me, I don't really have, I feel like I'm at a point where I know, Nate, you did a video not too long ago about the fine line between prepping and hoarding. And it's like, I feel like I'm at that boundary where it's like, all right, I gotta start organizing because it's getting a little to be too much. And, over the years accruing, and fortunately, I've been fortunate that companies send me stuff, but, for me, the big thing that I just recently did was install solar with the whole home battery backup system.
Okay.
It's kind of like a Tesla Powerwall, very similar concept, but with grid issues that we're having out here, that's been a big just peace of mind that we don't have to deal with that.
Did you just go find the company, or?
Well, again, that's one of the perks, and I'll admit it's a huge advantage of having a YouTube channel. A company sent me the unit. I had to pay for solar, but there are a lot of tax rebates that people aren't aware of that you can get for these items, and they can pay a substantial amount of it. And I think if things continue on the path that we're on, it's something that I would consider. Of course, I know everybody's budget's different. It's not a low-end item for sure, but it may become more and more important as time passes.
Yeah, I've been looking into that. I'm actually going the bring your own batteries, kind of way. And no matter what way you slice it, it's expensive.
It's very expensive.
The panels are so cheap right now compared to the ability to store the energy that, it's crazy.
Yeah, storage is not cheap right now. But yeah.
What about you, Cliff?
The dual use of that, I just wanted to say is, EVs. I've done many videos on EVs, and EV is kind of like most EVs, the battery packs are bigger than Tesla Powerwalls, like by many factors. So, if you have a vehicle like a Tesla, for instance, that has a 80 kilowatt hour battery, most Tesla Powerwalls, I think they're only like 10 kilowatt hours or something.
They're not that big,
yeah. So the car is your battery.
Well, you saw with Ford what they're doing with their F-150. It's 100 kilowatt hours, and you can actually plug it into your house to power. And that's if they were able to do that, I think that's going to be a great dual purpose item.
So I know people have their reservations about the one-off chance of an EMP, but if you can get over that, and you're going to buy a car anyways, maybe you should consider an EV because it will double as a way to store your solar power.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah. How about you, Cliff? What's your next purchase?
Well, let's see. My next purchase, I'll say what's in my wish list on or my cart actually is a lot of trying to do a lot more stuff with my son for Boy Scouts. He does that and more outdoor activities, and so a lot of overlanding type gear is what I'm doing. So I'm trying to build up my cart and what the first purchase would be for that, because I feel like overlanding is adjacent to preparedness, and so I'm trying to get it so our Boy Scout camping setup could also double as our bug out type into the vehicle, and having more of the overlanding setup. And my vehicle is like, it's been long paid off, and I don't mind messing with it a little bit and tweaking it out. So that's kind of what my big purchase, like others, I have a lot of stuff. A lot of the things that I need now is more knowledge and skills, and some proprietary type stuff that's just only for me, like some of the medications and stuff. I've also been kind of toying with, I think Chris was talking about the financial, I don't know if it was Dave Ramsey, but I assume that's what it was, but going with the whole Dave Ramsey, okay, save that $1,000, get that cash there and get that ready to go. And I'm kind of rotating it with, okay, the $1,000, now I'm going to aim for try to get $1,000 of silver. Now I'm going to try to get $1,000 of gold in little bits and pieces. Right. Then I'm going to do $1,000 of Bitcoin, and then I'm going to just keep going and see how that goes. And that's kind of been my little thing that I've been doing for a little bit now, just for see how it works out. So,
smart.
Are you going to share your bug out vehicle build with us?
Maybe if I could film it. I've been so busy with work and stuff too, but a lot of the stuff I don't have it's just me, and no one helps me out. So so a lot of times it's hard enough just building up, but I most likely I will. So
well, kid prepper should be old enough to hold a camera.
He wants to start making allowance, and so or getting some money for allowance. So maybe instead of the chores, I'll have him be. Because I know you have the communist cameraman. Maybe I could have like the kid cameraman or something. So.
Yeah. My son is actually, we recently went on a trip and I got him a little toy camera. He's 7. So, it's amazing how he's trying to emulate me, what I do. I never even realized that he had this interest in, because he sees me doing it all the time. And it's wow, so, we could be inadvertently raising the next generation of
all the kids at school. Yeah, all the kids at school, they want to be us. They want to be like YouTubers, and or TikTok. As my kids love, like, hey Dad, could I make $5 if I help you with TikTok videos? And so it's cheap labor for me. So and we have a lot of fun planning it out and doing it as kind of family activity. So
yeah, that's great.
And they can give a much needed perspective too that we might not see, because we're in the doomer to boomer somewhere in between, right? So
yeah, right. Well, guys, I think this was a great first video.
This is awesome.
If everyone that's watching would do us a favor and leave a comment, leave a thumbs up. What we're going to try and do with this channel is really grow it and catapult it so that we can really devote a lot of community time here and talk about these things, because just having one point of view or another point of view, it gets muddled. And you hear from Chris and Cliff, they have a totally different side of looking at things than maybe Nate does or I do. So I think it's really good for our entire community to pick those different viewpoints and really dive into them. So if you could leave us a comment, please leave a thumbs up. I believe, and Nate and Chris, you'll have to tell me, do you think that a comment is more important than a share? Because I don't see the shares being that important. What are your thoughts, as far as YouTube engagement goes?
Well, I think that both are good, because the share is how you gauge virality. Okay. So that's how a video goes viral, is people share it. So there's the algorithm aspect, and but the sharing is the organic virality, whereas the algorithm determines what gets seen. Yeah. But I just have one question. Sure. I just have one question for you guys. One last question.
Okay, sure.
I've been thinking about this. If we were the Ninja Turtles, who would everybody be?
I was hoping you'd say the A-Team, but I don't know. I never watched Ninja Turtles.
Is that a Casey Jones bat? You didn't pay money for that, did you? I always liked Raphael. So
okay,
I would want to be Michelangelo.
Okay, well, I figured, because of the all-American prepper shtick, that you guys would cast me as Michelangelo, but I guess so that makes Chris our leader. He's the Leonardo, right?
I've never seen the show. I hate to admit it, but
I don't think I'm smart enough to be Donatello, so that's there.
You've never seen the Ninja Turtles, man? You're a real boomer.
I missed it, man. I was
Holy
G.I. Joe
cow.
and Transformer, so
He's-
maybe I'm dating myself
right.
here.
He's a Crane.
Alright.
He's not on the Ninja Turtle.
He's
Splinter.
He's one of the foot soldiers.
Yeah, Bebop and Rocksteady, one of those.
Whoever that
Yeah,
rabbit
yeah.
hangs out with him, I don't know.
Yeah, Splinter. You can be Splinter.
Splinter,
He's
yeah.
the older guy.
Splinter's pretty
Sure.
awesome. Yeah.
Okay, I'm the old guy here. Am I seriously the oldest? I'm 40. I'll be 46 in a month. How? Oh, I didn't know.
Oh, dated yourself.
Oh, geez.
I'm about 23 now, so.
Yeah. Early 30s. You know.
My face might say 50, but I haven't hit 40 yet.
Yeah.
Early
There you go.
40s for me. So.
Yeah.
All right. I throw that out there.
Yeah, that's a good ending question. That's a bonus right there
Yep.
for everybody.
So please, subscribe to this channel. That's going to be important. We're going to keep talking about it on our individual channels, but subscribe here so that you get an alert every time a video comes out here. Make sure you hit that alert button, leave a comment, and like Nate said, share the video if you found it useful and you think somebody in your family or your Facebook page or any of your groups can. Please share it with them. But from all of us to your family and everything that you're doing to prepare, we appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today. We hope you'll join us with some questions for next video.
Cheers, guys. Take
Yeah.
care.